Back with you, the ML Sports Platter, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. You can get it also on the Podbean app, Stitcher, Tumblr, and YouTube. We are presented by Rosie's Corner. If you're in and around Central New York, make sure you get to Rosie's Corner, the official pizza shop of the ML Sports Platter, for pizza, for wings, pasta, great appetizers. Hot and cold subs are going to be bringing back Taco Tuesdays here in another week or so, so be on the lookout for the menu change for the spring and summer seasons. And of course, that unbelievably luscious ice cream truck will be back in action as well. Get off the Bartell Road exit, swing up to Route 11 right in front of the Bruton Bridge, and you can have a ball eating at Rosie's Corner, the official pizza shop of the ML Sports Platter. We're also brought to you by Bryant and Stratton College, Bradley's Jewelers, and Timber Banks Golf Club. So, we are approaching May. And that means that in the baseball season, it's very early. It means that in the NHL and NBA playoffs, we're getting into the meat of the rounds in terms of, championship pedigree. You start to see maybe who some favorites really are, even more than before. And in the NHL, to me right now, and I know they lost Game 2 against Columbus, but it also went to overtime, there is no team right now that looks better and more poised to win the Stanley Cup than the Boston Bruins. I actually picked this team to win it all last year. They just make things really uncomfortable for other teams, and when you watch this team, it always seems like they're primed and ready to score a huge goal. Between Brad Marchand to David Pastrnak to Patrice Bergeron, they've got really good defensemen who can pinch in and do things, from Charlie McAvoy to a host of others. Zdeno Chara still got plenty left in the tank. I can't say enough about the centerman, Charlie Coyle. They're deep, they're balanced, they're versatile, they're tough, and they have goaltending, and they've been there before. They just make things look really, 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 really hard for the other team. They make things really, really difficult. And, if I'm the Bruins, if I'm the, if I'm, in the front office, if I'm a player, I'm feeling pretty darn good right now, about my chances. And you go into Columbus, I get it, but I'm feeling pretty good because you're going to end up having home ice. Boston is actually a place that is extremely difficult to play. It's actually one of the rare places in the NHL that has a home ice. Generally speaking, there aren't many of those type of places because the arenas really are at this point one and the same. You don't go to Joe Louis and then have a completely different atmosphere in Chicago and then go up to Maple Leaf Gardens or the Old Forum or the Aud in Buffalo or wherever it may be, and have just completely and utterly different situations, different arenas, atmospheres, dimensions, etc. Look to the building, feel to the building, smell to the building. You just don't have that anymore. You have, most of these arenas are the same. However, Boston is a very, very difficult place to play. The fans are literally, they sound like they're right on you. I've seen a regular season game there, a couple regular season games there, and it feels like the playoffs during the regular season, and then you don't even want to know what it sounds like during the postseason if you haven't been there. So this is a very, 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 very strong home ice, and, not just for the fact that a lot of teams have trouble matching up with the Bees, but here's another huge part of why I think Boston's going to come out of the East. And I just, last year I had said that I'd be shocked if it wasn't Pittsburgh, Boston, and Tampa, one of those three teams out of the East. And lo and behold, Washington ends up going and winning the Stanley Cup. But I'm feeling very good and very confident about Boston again, not just from the standpoint of how they play, the experience, the goaltending, the fact that they have all the things that you need to win this time of year, goaltending, depth, their stars better than yours, and special teams. But they offer up a real moxie and a real DNA about them. And here's the final point to why I think the Boston Bruins are going to go to the Stanley Cup Finals and why I may just pick them in the Stanley Cup Finals. Look at all the other teams in the East. Like, Columbus is a nice team and a nice story, but can they sustain through 7 games of the Bruins' relentless attack? The Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Islanders on the other side. Folks, Pittsburgh's gone. Tampa Bay is gone. Toronto was beaten in the first round by Boston. The top dog teams, the teams that would be tough for Boston, are gone. Granted, Tampa Bay and Toronto are based on finesse, but you get the point. Toronto probably didn't have enough defense in the end, and Muzzin, being the only guy, picked up in that trade with LA. But the reality of the situation is this Boston team, to me, they've got layers upon layers upon layers of things that are over, an advantage over everybody else, basically. And I just don't think Carolina or New York, or the current team they're playing in Columbus. In fact, I think Columbus has the best shot, to beat Boston, I think, because they've got Bobrovsky playing really well in a contract year. They've got depth. They're rolling out line after line. They've got big-time goal scorers and Steve Duchesne and, of course, Panarin. They ended up going for it this year in Columbus. And I give their front office and their folks credit that they went out and said, no, you know what, we're going to go out and acquire somebody. We're going to actually go for this thing. They could have easily mailed it in. They could have mailed it in. They could have traded Bobrovsky. They could have traded Panarin. They could have gotten a haul for each guy. There were plenty of teams that were looking for goaltending, and there were plenty of teams looking for a frontline score. Plenty of teams. But they said, no thanks. No thanks. We'll do just fine here, and we'll give it a go. And the free agents to be, those guys are going to make a shitload of money, because they're having a really nice playoff. And, again, there's a demand for frontline scoring and goaltending. Columbus went for it. And I say good for them. And now it's a good thing that they did, because Columbus is literally like the biggest threat to the Boston Bruins. I just don't, I'm not confident at all in the Islanders. I just don't think that they have enough there. Robin Leonard might be a nice piece there as the goaltender to kind of try and steal a game or two. I don't think he has steal the game potential like a Bobrovsky does, or like many other goaltenders do in the NHL. How confident am I if the Hurricanes make it? They'll get grinded down by Boston, And I think at the end of the day, Boston's a more clutch team. Boston scores more goals late. Boston just figures it out. And I think that the Bruins are easily the favorite to go from the East. And you know what? Frankly, if they get to the Stanley Cup Finals and they face a team from the West, all the teams that are left, Sharks, well, the Sharks play both ways. They play a lot of finesse and they're tough. The Avalanche are finesse. The Stars are kind of like an unheralded bunch. And the Blues are kind of, I don't know, their style kind of varies as well. And they're led by a couple of guys like Tarasenko and Ryan O'Reilly, who are up and down players, but they can also check. The difference with Boston is they've got a bunch of those guys. They have a bunch of them on defense, a bunch of them on offense. So it's going to be an interesting rest of the way. I did not foresee this happening, where our Final Four in the East is Carolina, the Islanders, Columbus, and Boston. Felt pretty confident from the beginning about Boston. There's no question about that. But this is going to be some kind of a run here towards the end for all these teams, especially the Boston Bruins, if they can get it done. But I just think Boston's a scary team right now. Everything that you need in the Stanley Cup playoffs to succeed, everything, Boston has. You've got a goaltender who's been there before. You have a monster line up front. You've got big-time scores, clutch players. You've got that grit and tenacity that you need. You've got blend and balance and depth on your roster. They have everything. They have everything. So I'm feeling Boston out of the East for those reasons. And they've just got a lot of players who can hurt you. And like I said, when the game gets late and you're playing the Bruins, if you're a fan of the opposite team, the opposing team, how uncomfortable are you feeling? When Brad Marchand is skating all over the place with his 22 minutes or so of ice time and 9 points in the playoffs. When Charlie Coyle gets ready to ring up a shot. Pasternak is making moves through your defense. Krejci, who I didn't even mention before. Patrice Bergeron, guys who have been there before. The defensemen that have been very good, from Krug to McAvoy and others. And Zdeno Chara, the grandpa of the roster, is a very good team, and it's a very scary team, and a team that I think is going to go to the Stanley Cup Finals, and I would not be surprised if they win the whole darn thing. We are presented here on the ML Sports Platter by our terrific friends at the Wolfenden Law Firm, as well as Timberbanks Golf Club, the Manor Bakehouse Cafe, and Bradley's Jewelers. Log on to bradleysjewelers.com and shop the showcase. Hit me on Twitter at Mike L Sports. Download, subscribe, leave feedback for, and a 5-star review all over Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. It's the ML Sports Platter, and as I always tell you, enjoy the games.